This session is being recorded, so we will also be sending out a recording after this webinar this morning. Thanks again for joining. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Cecilia Tevel. I run the customer success programs at Tatango, and I enjoy working with all of you. If you have any specific questions for me after this session, you can just email me at ceciliatatango.com, and I'll be happy to stay in touch. For today's agenda, we're going to talk about how to decide what part of your customer success journey can be standardized and automated. Every customer success journey is unique, and it must be, specific to your business and its needs. So figuring out which parts of it can be automated, streamlined, and standardized for your whole customer success department is important. We'll also dive into the demo and we'll configure some SuccessPlays. So we'll show you some examples of some SuccessPlays that you can think of and also how to configure them into Tango. And then some ideas as to how to track your progress as well into Tango. Also, just to let you know, if you have any questions as we go through the slides and the demo, we will hopefully have some time at the end to go through them. So if you want to start, if you think of something during the session, you can just type it into the question box and we will take the questions as they come in. All right, so if you think about your customer success journey, it goes through several phases, and this is kind of an example of some of the phases that a typical customer would go through. And in each particular phase, there's a process. So how do we streamline that process? How do we standardize that for your whole team so that everybody's following kind of the same steps, everyone's on the same page as to what needs to happen in each particular phase. Some of these might be more, specific, like for example, in onboarding, there's probably a specific process, very consistent steps that have to happen. But in certain cases, things like escalations can be, they can be a little bit less standardized, because the escalation reason might be different, but the process that you follow should probably have some consistency. So with Tatango, you can actually take a look at the journey and then decide what steps are consistent across the team and what can be really streamlined and set up for the customer success department to follow consistently across the board. Maybe your customer success department is not all in one location. Maybe you have geographic distribution, and it's helpful to have some consistency so that everyone has a very consistent process so that the customer has a very streamlined and consistent experience across the board, regardless of where they are located. So if we think about, is there a consistent team process? And so in onboarding, what are these steps? What's the A to Z to get that customer launched and onboarded? In adoption, how does your team interact with the customer, and how do you try to get the customer to deeper adopt your product? Is there a high-touch process that can be implemented via SuccessPlays? Or is there a low-touch model where you can actually automate some of this via one-to-many approach? And campaigns are a great vehicle for that, for your team. Escalations. How do you process escalations and what happens? Who gets involved? What does that process look like? Would it be helpful to get consistency so that if there's a specific threshold that deems an escalation, that the team member responsible has the same guidance across the board, consistently across the team? And then renewals and upsells. What is that process like? What does an upsell opportunity look like for your department? How much, utilization do you require to deem an upsell opportunity? And how can you prompt your team members automatically to reach out to a customer when there is a good candidate for an upsell opportunity? So all of that, all of these questions, are things that you can start thinking about, and then Tatango can really map all this out with the processes that are available, specifically with SuccessPlays. And then again, campaigns are also an opportunity for you to automate some of this via one-to-many approach. So if we look at some examples of some of the onboarding type of SuccessPlays where you can operationalize your process, these are just some examples that one of our customers utilized. They have a final onboarding check-in. So after an onboarding process is complete, there's a SuccessPlay that is set up for the customer success department to follow up at 30 days after onboarding check-in. And then there's also a new client. So within the first 21 days, there's a specific process in onboarding that has to be followed consistently across the team. So these are some ideas for onboarding SuccessPlays. Also, what you can do if the onboarding process is not going as you would like it to, you can actually set up an escalation process within the onboarding journey phase. So there can be a specific process and a specific task assigned to the customer success department to get involved and be proactive early. As an onboarding phase is actually a pretty critical phase in the life cycle journey of a customer. And if the customer doesn't get onboarded efficiently, quickly, then that can be a problem. So getting in front of that problem ahead of any potential fires is a good idea. And then if you are collecting survey results or if you're doing some sort of NPS and if Tatango knows the score, then what you can do is essentially have a process to follow up on customers that have given you a lower than desirable score. So anything potentially lower than 9, you want to keep in touch with that customer consistently, resurvey them and give them the extra care and attention so that, they can get into better shape and give you better score the next time you have an opportunity to survey them. So another thing you could do is, if we're looking for more kind of automation that is done via campaigns, you can drive your onboarding process more like a hands-off process with the campaign automation. So if there's a specific process that your customers follow, and if they have to configure and set up specific things in their onboarding journey, and that potentially does not require someone to kind of handhold them through that process, you can set it up via campaign. So the right targeted email can be delivered to the customer at the right time within their journey to allow them to complete something or to integrate something. And that really helps your team sort of prioritize their time and more meaty discussions with the customer, and then have them self-service themselves if appropriate for your particular onboarding process. Visualizing information is also important. So this comes in handy when you're trying to track your progress with the customer. So this is an example of how a customer visualized their journey through some of the stages via the health console. So you can actually set up your journey phases, and this one goes through, new customer, onboarding completed, post-onboarding, pre-established, and established. So that's the life cycle journey that this customers go through. And you can actually map it out and then see how each bucket or each segment of your customers is doing. So you'll have a little pie chart. You'll see what the health score is, and you can actually hover over all of the time frames, all the dates, to see how the customer's health improves or hopefully improves. And if there's any downturn, you can actually note it and then build a process to get the customers in that particular segment into better shape. You can also visualize some of the progress by your team. So this is an example of a report that looks at customers that went live in the past 120 days, broken out by their onboarding NPS score and also by their success manager. So this is just a quick example how you can take any segment that is available to you in Tatango and visualize it in a report. And this gives you some visual ways to track your progress and slice and dice your data by various components. And this one is sliced by, there's also a health component, so you can see how many customers are in each particular health state. So this is also a good example. If you have any specific questions as how to configure this for yourself, you can work with your customer success manager, or you can reach out to me, and we can dive in deeper and have a kind of a working session on the reporting capability and visualizing this if you need to. So if we look at, the other processes that can be potentially, automated and streamlined for your team, if we look at the renewal phase for your customer base, and if it's a high-touch renewal process where you have a customer success manager dedicated to the account actually having a conversation and having a process that they have to follow, you can identify those customers in a segment that are coming up for renewal. And then you can actually specify the SuccessPlay They can be automatically sent to the customer success manager in advance of the renewal, 90 days up front, and you can specify what the actual customer success manager needs to do within that process. Now, you can also have a low-touch renewal process. So this can be automated via campaigns if it's appropriate. If your customers renew kind of on their own, if it's non-event, and then you can prompt them to do that via setting up a campaign that will go directly to the customer when they're approaching renewal. Maybe there's some automated links that they have to click through. Maybe there's also an upsell opportunity there where you can extend new features and capabilities to them and have them sort of self-service themselves and complete the renewal without anyone actually hand holding them through the process. So that can be done via campaigns. So with that, I'm going to jump out and I'm going to get into the demo portion of our webinar this morning. Let me just get into my screen really quick and I'll show you some of the ways that you can actually start defining your specific criteria for SuccessPlay. So one example that I wanted to show today, and I created an escalation folder and I created an escalations segment. So for those of you, we actually, part of our recent releases this week, and this is the webinar that we'll have next Thursday, is on a Zendesk integration. So if your company uses Zendesk as their ticketing system, you can actually integrate that easily into Tango, and then you can actually build some logic about your tickets. So in this particular case, what I'm doing, I'm looking at customers that have more than one unsolved top priority ticket. And I have identified who these customers are. I have 15 in this segment. And what I want to do, because top priority tickets are pretty critical and important to resolve in an efficient and a speedy manner, I want to make sure that my customer success manager is involved in that process, or at least aware that that is happening to their customer. So once I have defined this logic, and that's very easy to do within the filtering editor capabilities, let me just bring that up really quick so that you can see what my specific criteria was. I'm looking at all my customers that are paying. I have the number of top priority unsolved tickets is equal to or over than 1. And now that I have this, I can actually launch directly into a SuccessPlay to specify what I would want my customer success team to do whenever we encounter the situation. So I'll bring up this directly in my SuccessPlay editor. The benefit of building the segment first and launching into the SuccessPlay is that all the logic will already be present for me once the screen loads. So I don't have to redefine this. So now I have my name for my SuccessPlay. I can give it a description right now. I'll just make it test just for efficiency's sake. And this is the new capability here. This is also something we'll review next week. For each interaction that you define or SuccessPlay that you define into Tango, you have a success flow associated with. So you can actually categorize the type of activity that this will be. And now I have actually a specification here. I have an escalation. So now I can actually group these types of interactions with the escalation bucket. And once I have that, I can actually preview my segment to make sure everything is still aligned with what I want to do and the right customers fall into this. Then I can click on continue and I can give a description. So I want the CSM to have an internal meeting with support to identify the path to resolution. And I will select my team member so I can actually assign it directly to my success manager. It can be assigned by me. I can give it priority. This should be high because it is an escalation. I can give it a due date. I want to give it a due date of 1 day after creation because it's pretty critical. And once I have my task, I can click on continue. I have another opportunity to preview it, and then I can simply activate it. When I activate it, it's going to let me know how many accounts are going to be affected, how many tasks will be created. And once I click on continue, my SuccessPlay is going to be executed, sent to my customer success team members, and available for me to track in my SuccessPlays tab here. So that's one example of a process you can easily define by simply selecting what is the right criteria and building a success play from there. Now, if we look at other potential opportunities for us to streamline and define processes into Tango, one great way would be to look at maybe upsell opportunities. And really, the criteria for upsell opportunity is really specific or dependent on your business and what would deem an upsell opportunity. In cases where you have a licensing model, you can easily look at license utilization. So you can specify a license utilization above a certain percentage in the last, whatever, how many days. In this particular case, we're looking at 14 days. And then you can launch into a success play the same way we just did, and define the process that you want your customer success department, or maybe the sales team gets involved here to work on that upsell. So essentially anything that you would want to automate and standardize in a process can be first defined in a segment where you can actually prepare everything in a folder, define your thresholds, and then infuse the definitions into your success plays directly from the segment screen. So with that, I'm going to pause for a second to see if I have any questions, and then we'll take some questions and then continue on. So it looks like I do have some questions already coming in. So one question is, how could Tatango know the NPS score? So that's a great question. So Tatango will know if the NPS score if you are sending that information to Tatango. So if you have data about NPS scores somewhere recorded in some system, then it's very easy to get that into Tatango. So one way, if you have potentially a Salesforce or a CRM integration, then it's simply defining that particular variable to sync the data into Tatango. So if you have an attribute on the account level, or maybe there's a user level NPS score that you're collecting, you can actually sync both of those data points into Tatango. So that's one way. If there's another system that collects NPS scores and it's not Salesforce, you can actually get that data in through the integration hub. So via a CSV file, it's very easy to load that in. We can get that data in, and then you can leverage that information in your processes. I hope that helps. The other question, the question is, does Tatango integrate with Delighted or other NPS score tools? So that's a great question. I'm not sure if we are integrated with Delighted. I know we have, there's through the integration hub, there's various tools that we can connect to. I'm not sure if Delighted is one of those, so we'll need to research that. But if you do have, like I mentioned, if you do have the scores available to you, we can get them in either through Salesforce right now, if it's integrated with your system, or simply through a CSV file load through the integration hub if you already have the NPS scores available. I hope that helps. Again, if anybody else has any questions, feel free to type them into the question box, and we will take them as they come in. The other thing I wanted to mention, same with kind of the logic that you would define within the segmentation to continue on your process. If we look at the renewal component of Tatango, if you wanted to do some sort of automated renewals, and we talked about this, we saw a screenshot earlier, you would define that actually on the user level if you're going to build a campaign. So you would actually build a user level segment, and you would actually specify what is your criteria for those users. And typically, your outreach for renewal process would go to, I would assume, a key contact. And Tatango tracks key contacts. You can specify who the key contact is. It's an attribute that lives on Tatango. So I'm basically saying that the key contact is one of yes, and the renewal date is the next 60 days. So I have all my users identified, and I can launch directly into my campaign the same way I did with the SuccessPlays. I can launch directly into a campaign editor directly from my segment, which makes the whole process of configuration a little bit speedier. And again, I have the opportunity to define what type of success flow this will be. Whether it's renewal, and in this particular case it will be, I can specify that, so I can categorize my campaigns and look at them later and analyze that data going forward. I can specify the type of campaign this will be. I usually like to use the build my own campaign. It allows me for kind of richer configuration capabilities. And from here, typically I would get my criteria already loaded, so I don't have to rebuild it from scratch. If for some reason that's not the case, the other thing I can also do is launch my editor. And I'm sorry, for some reason the demo instance right now is freezing up on me, so maybe I'll pause that for a second and see if we can relaunch that in a moment. Yeah, for some reason this one's not cooperating with me. But essentially, by infusing the logic that's already pre-built in the campaigns, you can save yourself a lot of time. So if you have the time to kind of think about what the logic will be and pre-configure it in a specific folder or build specific folders that you can navigate back to, that will save you some time, and everybody can actually review the logic before you build your processes out. So that's a quick tip for everyone. So let me just double check to see if we have any questions. I have a couple more minutes. I will stay on to see if there are any other questions that come in. Otherwise, thank you so much for attending this webinar this morning. I want to remind you again that we will have a session next week